why your deals are falling through. You practice this before you even go out and talk to the seller, because the moment you fumble is the moment they know that you're trying to follow a script. It's crazy how people don't understand that. Mucho loco. My business was at risk of failure until I changed this one thing. This business is all about presentation. I don't care if you have to fake it or make it. The last thing you want is the seller to lose confidence in your ability to close. All right. One of the biggest mistakes that wholesalers make is that they're scared to present a $100,000 to $150,000, $200,000 cash offer to a seller. That does not mean that your end buyer cannot pay that amount. At the end of the day, you are not purchasing that property. You are assigning the rights of that property to your end buyer. Going in there with confidence, with the right knowledge, and the proper way to execute is gonna help you close the deal every single time. The next thing that I wanna talk about is understanding the seller and how to properly execute the deal. So there are 4 different types of personality. The first one is gonna be amicable. So there's 4 types of personality. Why don't you hold this up? Analytical, driver, amiable, expressive. Grab the book. Knowing your seller's personality is going to be the entire guidebook on how you close this deal. It's also really important to make sure you've done your homework on the property, such as how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, is it pier and beam or slab, how old is the roof, has the HVAC been replaced. You need to know what is going on with your property. It's like going to an automobile dealership and you're looking to buy a car, you haven't test driven it, you don't know what's under the hood, you don't know what type of engine it is, you don't know how fast the car goes, you don't know how much gas that the car eats, you don't know how much an oil change is gonna cost. You need to factor in a lot of these things whenever you're going out to purchase a property. Similar to purchasing a car, you wouldn't purchase a vehicle without test driving it. Same thing when you're buying a property or investing in real estate. You need to touch, feel, and smell that property in order to give an accurate offer for that piece of property. So that brings us back to our previous point of decision makers. You want to make sure you're speaking to the right decision maker. In order to verify who you're speaking with and if they're the actual owner of the property, you want to consult with your local county appraisal district. All right, whatever county you're in, there's going to be a CAD. Go to their website and look up the owner of record, and you'll be able to see if there is a spouse attached to the owner of record also. Now, those websites are going to be for free. If you want to go into detail on what the property characteristics are, make sure you go to runmycomps.com, so that way you have access to their mortgage information. You know how much balance is due on the property. You know who actually owns the property, how many years they've owned that property for, and it'll break down every single detail before you even walk through that property. Now that is what's called being prepared. One time back in 2019, we had a seller looking to sell us their property. It was out in Spring, Texas, and the value of that property was around $320,000. The seller was asking 180 grand. And we always wondered, why is the seller even asking a low price for this property? Now, we get low prices all the time, but in that specific area, that one just clicked a little different. We've done our research on the property. The seller, the person who we were talking to on the phone, turned out to be the tenant, okay? So he was impersonating the seller, and we only found this out at closing when they actually pulled title. Everything cleared on the title, and we went to closing on the property, and it just so happened that the title company asked for a valid driver's license, and the seller gave someone else's name on their driver's license. That is when we actually found out that the seller was not the owner of the property. In fact, he was a tenant and he was running this scam all over the place. Now, how did that deal affect us? Yes, I lost out on $30,000 in profit on that deal. But when I look at that deal in hindsight now, I could have lost a lot more, because buying a property in a fraudulent manner is, yes, illegal, right? And this guy has gotten a lot of people prior. So luckily, I was able to save ourselves, and we were able to save our buyer from buying a property illegally from someone who does not own the property. So make sure you please verify who is actually selling the property. This is why it's very important to know this. Another question that you might want to ask the seller is, have you gotten any other offers for this property? If they tell you yes, that means they are also talking to other investors. Remember guys, you want to make sure that you get in front of the seller before your competition does. There have been instances where other wholesale companies have gone out and were talking to sellers, and we came in and started talking to them also. The seller went with us because they liked us and trusted us versus any other wholesale company out there. So building a reputation around your company and your brand is very important. Now, if they are talking to someone else, that's okay. Remember, your seller is just trying to get the absolute most money possible for their property. Don't blame them, right? It is your job to come through and meet the seller first before anybody else does. We've even had sellers sign a promissory contract with us that they'll sell us their contract whenever they're ready to sell. Sometimes we have sellers that sign the contract with us and they're not ready to sell. We also like to give sellers a back out clause in our contract. For any reason at all, no questions asked, it's an unconditional guarantee. We sign it, they sign it. This way they feel more comfortable. Now, what does this do for us? You're probably asking, Ron, why did you sign a contract if the seller's not ready to sell? Number one, it takes the seller out of the market. Imagine this, the seller is shopping it around. When he or she goes into contract with someone else, they're not gonna go and sign another contract. It's not gonna happen. So you wanna make sure you take the seller out of the market and promise to close at the timeline that you both decide. So now you're at the negotiation table. Here's some things that you wanna keep in mind.